It's one thing to sell a product and make a good profit on it. It's another thing entirely to obscenely overcharge for something and rip people off. And that's what's happening with... It's one thing to sell a product and make a good profit on it. It's another thing entirely to blatantly and obscenely overcharge for something and rip people off. And that's what's happening with printer ink. HP, Canon, Lexmark, all the big printer companies, they pay a little bit of money for ink and they charge you a fortune for it. Now you don't have to look very far on the internet to see stories about how much profit is made on printer ink and solutions for that. And people will say, well, the printer companies will sell you the printer really cheap and they'll make up the loss by overcharging for the ink. Well, if they can't sell the printer for a profit, that's their problem. Don't go coming to me to pay you all kind of extra money for ink. You know, charge more for the printer and charge a little bit for the ink. That would be more reasonable to me. But for a long time I've seen on eBay refill kits for printer ink, and I've watched videos on YouTube how to refill your ink cartridges, and I've read stories about it and I've seen, well, it might work, it might not work. So finally I've had a printer for about 2.5 years now and I've bought ink for it several times. And one day I said, you know what, I've had enough of paying all this ridiculous money for printer ink. I'm going to get one of these refill kits and try it myself just to see if it really does work. So I went on eBay and I got a black ink refill kit for about $12 or $13. And then more recently I got a color ink refill kit that was less than $7. And I'm going to show you here the results of my experiments. Here's my printer. It's an HP OfficeJet 3830. And over 2.5 years and 1,000 pages, it's been a good printer. It didn't cost a lot. It does a good job. Only problem is HP thinks it's my responsibility to pay for their entire company's operations by overcharging me for printer ink. So here's what I have to do my experiment with. Here are the number 63 ink cartridges out of my 3830 printer. This is the black ink I got, and I looked at this label and I thought, what kind of super cheap made in China fly-by-night operation do you call this? And I shook the bottle and I saw how thin the ink was. I thought ink would be thicker. It's almost like water thinness. But anyway, you know, for $12, $13, I'll take a shot. Let me give you the little needle here to put on the end of the syringe, and a syringe to put the ink in with. Now with these labels on the top of the cartridges, you just peel them up and the hole is underneath. And you can look at videos online to see more details about that. But my first mistake I made in doing this was I filled up this syringe all the way to 10 milliliters and I put that in the ink cartridge. And the problem I had was I thought, well, what if this ink looked really thin? I thought, what if this ink just runs right through the print head and just flows out all over the place? So I had used folded up toilet paper on top of some other pieces of paper. And I put the ink right on it sitting flat like that. Well, that was the mistake, because capillary action from the paper drew all the ink out of the cartridge. And overnight, I had a big circle about 4 or 5 inches across of all the ink that had pulled through the print head and out. This thing was totally empty. So I looked online, I read some more YouTube videos, and I thought, oh yeah, it says don't put it on a paper towel because it'll draw the ink right out. Okay. So I went back again and I filled up this syringe halfway to 5. And I refilled the ink and I put it on a piece of plastic sheet. And it didn't drip anymore. And so I put it back in the printer, and it worked. And it's been printing well. Now, for the color side, I went back on eBay, and this is from some other high-quality company called Ink Pro. I went to the same seller on eBay, and I got this stuff. And this is the yellow ink. Does that look yellow to you? And look how thin it is. Hey, I haven't tried the color one yet, but the other one worked, so it'll probably work. They give you 3 separate syringes for the colors and 3 needle tips for it. Once I get done filling up the ink, I wash it out with isopropyl alcohol so it doesn't get all ruined. And this is the page I printed out. Now look here. Here is what's remaining on the color cartridge, and here is the black. And you see the black is reading totally empty. Well, we've printed about 30 pages now with the black showing totally empty, and it's still working. With my model of printer, I read several different things online, like have 2 extra sets of these cartridges, put one in, restart the printer, shut it down, take it back out, put a different cartridge in, because the printer can save 2 ink cartridges in its memory. And if you have 2 to cycle through, you'll be back to a 3rd one, and it'll forget how full or empty it was. And then I've read other things where it says you have to take a piece of tape and cover over 1 or 2 of these contact points so that it'll work. Well, I didn't do either one of those. I had 1 extra set of these, and I ran them through, and I refilled the set I had in the printer already, and it's working. And I didn't tape over any contacts either. And so far, with that little bit of work here and a whole $20 investment, so far it's working. So, more money for you and less money for the big greedy corporations. So, to summarize, refilling printer inks worked for me. Not every printer is going to react the same way. I've read a lot of stories about how they're different. So try it with your printer and see if it works. And if it does, great. You're going to save money and take money off of these big greedy corporations who are only interested in their corporate profit at your expense. And boy, does that feel good.